Wait. So let me see if I got this right. So they're asking us to not only take certain events of season 1 and pretend that they didn't happen, but they're also asking us to take certain things that didn't happen and pretend that they did happen, and that they happened in such a way that when we get to the point that we're at in season 2, it's totally believable.
Gentlemen, to the future. Oh, you don't have any glasses. Just pretend. The future. The future.
Hey, this is the Sword and the Pen Reflections. It is my casual alternative to the formal channel, the Sword and the Pen, link up there. Now, whether you've been here before or you're new, things are different. I have now seen all of season 2. All of it.
I've seen everything. I've seen it all.
I don't want any of the old timers to be worried that this is going to somehow take away from how I do my reviews, because I recorded this 2 days ago and I had pretty much the same kinds of things to say that I've had for other episodes, but I apparently had a lot more to say because I was also talking about where the show eventually takes the characters, how they do their own thing usually, and I had stuff to say about that. And my review ended up being 6.5 hours long. There is no way in hell I'm going to edit a 6.5 hour video. It wouldn't come out until Christmas. So here we are. I'm going to try and review from memory, so hopefully only the most important stuff comes to mind, but you know how it goes.
There's too much everything.
Also, I'm going to have fewer clips in this video than I did in the last one, simply because I did make this big-ass long recording the first time I did this, and then I did record a second one to make it even shorter, but the second one was not much shorter than the other one. It was still ended up this long, and adding clips takes forever. There are going to be clips, but fewer of them. Sorry. Before watching this episode, I had completely finished The Great Hunt, and I was about 3 or 4 chapters, I think, into The Dragon Reborn. I'm now on chapter 12 or 13. But anyway, I forgot to figure out which chapters are covered in episode 2, but I don't think it matters a whole lot because I think most of this is made up stuff.
Imagination.
Before we keep going, I just want to take a couple seconds to say a big special thank you to my 3rd ever My Precious tier patron, Janen. I don't know who the heck you are or why you think that I deserve this kind of patronage, but I couldn't be more grateful. And I hope that I can keep making videos that you enjoy and find worthy of the support that you're giving me. If we were living in Hobbiton right now, I'd be taking us out to the Green Dragon and ordering us a pint.
It comes in pints?
Janen, I will see you in the Discord. Okay, so we're looking at this by character arc starting with Rand. Now, with Rand, we begin with him having a nightmare about him killing his friends, Nynaeve and Egwene and all those people. My chair is really squeaky.
Squeaky, squeaking.
In his nightmare, we hear a voice saying, "You will kill them all." And later in the episode, as in a couple of minutes later, we hear that voice again say, "You will kill them all." So we get his motivation. He does not want to kill his friends. Perfect. That's pretty good motivation. But going forward, he can tackle this in 2 ways. He can either do it by running away from them, and that's it. He's just kind of passively trying to avoid them. Or 2, he can learn how to do his thing without killing them.
Is there another option?
I don't think he's gonna stop.
And as we see in the episode, it's the latter of these 2, which I think is a smart idea. It's not a good idea to have a passive character unless you have a lot of things happening to them. And in this episode, you'll see that not a whole lot happens to this character, other than the one power kind of takes over him for a moment. And then we get to a really big problem here. So it looks like he's been shacking up with this girl, Celine. Now, my mother watched this before me, and she thought that maybe she had missed this character in season 1, so she went back and watched season 1, and then she watched episode 1 again, and she was like, "What? I didn't miss anything." I'm like, "No, you didn't miss anything. The show just didn't explain who the hell this lady is." Celine in the show is very obviously evil. I mean, even the music is played in a minor key. It just sounds a little off, so we know she's up to no good. And by the time you get to the end of the episode, you're like, yeah, this is definitely not a good lady. So you're wondering, why the hell is Rand with her?
Jimmy, you're thinking with your dick.
He's no ignoramus or stranger to the world. I just don't believe it. So it doesn't seem believable that he wouldn't see right through this lady. But what the show is asking us to do is imagine that the two of them met in a believable way, formed a relationship that started out in a, oh, she's not bad sort of way, and now she's starting to show her dark side. But we're supposed to be like, oh, okay, yeah, it led up to this. But the thing is, we didn't see all of that. So all we see is a lady who is obviously evil, obviously pressuring Rand to doing things that are not good, and not having a positive influence on him. And we're going, why is he with her? Like, why wouldn't he be like, this is disturbing as all hell, I'm out of here? That is an awful lot to ask of your audience. And quite honestly, I don't know how the hell anybody would get away with this kind of bullshit.
Whatever, I do what I want.
This is just bad storytelling. It's just really bad. Now, in the book, what happened was Rand was on the great hunt for the horn, and he was magically transported against his will. It was kind of like he accidentally triggered something in his sleep, or possibly Selene did this, and he didn't know it. And he and Loyal and a guy named Huron are in this like weird parallel world where everything's a bit hazy and dreamlike. And they come across this young, beautiful woman who's very smart and just so impressive to Rand. And because he is a naive young man, he falls for her right away. And very slowly, she begins to kind of goad him to like, hey, you should be the one taking charge of this situation. Sort of like encouraging him to be a leader. And even though the readers as adults can tell that there's something off about this lady, it's believable that the character Rand would fall for her because he's a young, naive kid who's never really been out in the world, and he meets this absolutely drop-dead gorgeous woman. But you get the idea. It's believable how they interacted with each other. They decided to, let's try to figure out how to get out of here together. So that's why they're together. And then very slowly, she begins to turn into this, like, we can see that she's obviously trying to corrupt him in a very subtle way. And we also believe that Rand would fall for this because that's what stupid young men do, is they want to impress a girl that they like, so they try to show off for her or impress her in some way. But yeah, we really needed to see how Rand and Selene met in the show, because it's just not believable at all. What I probably would have done is show in episode 1 that he is lonely and he's, always wearing the cloak and traveling a lot, and we don't know exactly where he's going or what he's doing. And maybe at some inn, he encounters this beautiful woman who at first he tries to avoid, but he kind of is just down in the dumps, and she talks about how she's sort of down in the dumps too, and they sort of form this affinity. Then maybe they get drunk. If you have to take it to they're banging each other, have them maybe get drunk and end up in bed together. And he's like, oh no, what did I do? And that's where she shares her story, which she does later in the episode, that she's trying to forget somebody that she was in love with, and now she's lost this person. And being with Rand maybe kind of helped her to not have to think about that loss, but almost feel what she had before. Like, I can pretend you are somebody that I lost. And for him to realize that his night with her also kind of helped him to forget people that he doesn't want to remember. Like, he can just be lost in the moment, which is actually a very believable situation. I mean, this is what rebounds relationships are, right?
I totally rebounded.
And maybe she reveals that she's actually a noble lady who lives in the city, and she has this wonderful library. And this is where we see that Rand starts to think, maybe I can use her library, like, because she has all this knowledge about maybe prophecies or ancient histories of Aes Sedai, including the men and stuff. And like, that makes him want to know more about it. And he's like, you have a library? Like, she, I guess you could do the Beauty and the Beast thing.
You have a library?
Oh, yes. Yeah, indeed. With books.
But, he wants to have access to that library. And so he justifies himself staying with her because he wants access to that library. But he also kind of gives into the feeling of losing the pain by being with her. I think that's what I probably would have done. And I would have had a lot of that, probably up to the hookup night, happen in episode 1. And then at this point, I would have had them arriving at her estate, or maybe they've been there for a couple of days and he's, working in the library or whatever. Because then this replaces in the book where Selene was very knowledgeable about the past and prophecies and old magic systems. It sort of gives a reason for her to have had this information. And honestly, I think it would have been sneakier. Like, we would be watching if we had never read the books and going like, I guess people just have libraries that have this kind of information in them. It wouldn't be like, oh, she's just dropping this info like I just know this off of the top of my head, or even if she did, it would make sense because she's got this library. You get the idea. Anyway, let's move past that bit. But so in the show, she is in this seedy hotel, which doesn't make sense for things that happen later on in the episode, but she's in this seedy hotel, and Rand is hanging out with her and banging her also, and in the daytime, he goes to work as an orderly at an insane asylum. When I saw this the very first time, I thought that he was working here as kind of like a, he knows that he is going to go insane someday, so he feels like if I do this to care for other people, then it will, hopefully that, I don't know how do you explain this? I don't think there's a word for it, but it's basically like, I'm going to take care of these people who have gone insane because I hope that when I go insane, somebody will be kind and take care of me. And then it turned out that's not what it was. And I was actually kind of pleased that that's not what it was, but I don't really see what the hell the point of the mystery of this whole thing was. Like, why was it a mystery why he's at the insane asylum? Because when he started doing sneaky things, it sort of made me go like, okay, it takes away from the kindness of how you were treating the people in this insane asylum. So he goes to work, and he's the orderly who's assigned to a guy named Errol. And Errol used to be a heron-marked blade bearer. So Rand goes in and he's talking to Errol and being very gentle and kind with him. I don't know why, but for some reason the camera focused a lot on a horse figurine that he set upright on the bedside table, and then Errol even looked at him make that gesture and was like, oh, that's weird.
It means nothing. Zero. Zip.
But there was that. Then he's taking Errol for a walk around the hospital, giving him his daily exercise. And as they're going, he reveals that he has snuck his heron-marked blade into the asylum before, and Errol has been teaching him certain sword forms. Now, I have no idea how you could get away with somebody teaching you how to use a sword in an insane asylum that looks this busy. I mean, there's a lot of people around, and not get noticed. So for me, it's not really believable that Rand learns anything from this guy. And quite honestly, there's no reason for this to have happened in this show, because later we'll see that Rand doesn't ever need to use his sword. So I'm not sure why they had this bit here. Whatever, okay. Anyway, so he's taking the old guy for a stroll, and one of the other orderlies startles the old man and has a laugh about it. Like, isn't it funny that he's so jumpy and jittery? And this other orderly is a total dick and just puts down Rand and says, like, what are you gonna do? And of course, that's there so that the audience can be like, oh, you've messed with the wrong guy now. And he obviously did mess with the wrong guy, but anyway. And the other orderly reveals that he works in the garden with the more celebrity type inmates or patients. And I promise, the first time I viewed this, I knew Logain is one of those guys. Because who else would be in an insane asylum where they keep men who can channel and they're celebrities? Who do we know who's famous and insane? Not that that's the worst thing ever. It's fine. It can be predictable. Before we continue, please like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. It's a free way for you to support the channel, and for me, it might bring in some money from all the commercials they keep putting on my videos. Or if you're feeling super generous, check out my Patreon or Ko-fi. I've got links in the description. Or you can hit the money heart thanks button down below. Now, let's get back to it. But okay, then the next time that we see Rand, it's some sort of a festival, and I don't remember what the name of this festival is, but it did happen in the book, but the scene with this didn't happen. He's stalking that guy, that other orderly, and decides he's going to go and beat the shit out of him so that way he can't come to work the next day and Rand will have to step in and take over his duties. I did not mind him beating the crap out of him because this is show Rand, and show Rand is not the same person as book Rand. They have made Rand a more corrupt person who does things that aren't good and justifies them to himself, and this is one of those things. So I'm like, all right, fine. But while he's beating this guy up, the one power kind of takes over him and he almost kills him. Now, I do have to mention about the changes that they have made to the character of Selene in the show, because she's not the same person as she is in the books, but neither is Rand. So I actually think they had to change her character in the show in order to fit this new character of Rand. So Rand has been banging Egwene, so you needed to ramp her up in why would she be attractive to this character, Rand. So Rand has abandoned his friends and is off on his own, probably doesn't know what to do, and is probably feeling extremely alone. So you need to create the perfect rebound character, and so sex has to be involved because you have turned Rand into a sexual person. And because I'm not really convinced that Rand would be impressed by someone just being beautiful and intelligent, you need her to also be kind of controlling from the start. So that is what they have done with Selene. I'm not really a fan of either of these changes, but I do think that the changes were kind of necessary. I don't think she should have been quite as controlling. I think my idea for them meeting at the bar and whatever would have been better. And then maybe she slowly starts prodding him to, to try, doing different things. Like maybe she encourages him to go and talk to Logain. That would have been kind of cool. Now this next scene though, I don't really understand at all because I don't think it falls into the character of show Rand either. At least I would hope that it doesn't, because it would mean that he's an abuser. So he comes home very disturbed, and Selene is not at all concerned about him being very disturbed, and she wants to bang, and he's like, I just want to be alone. And she's like, well, but that's when we need each other the most. When things are crappy and we want to be alone, that's actually when we need each other the most. And she starts to kind of put the moves on him, and he's like, no. But then he suddenly gets angry, and you hear like this voiceover. It's not even saying anything. It's just like a whispering in his head. And I don't know if this is supposed to be him starting to go insane. Maybe that's what they're trying to imply. In which case, I would hope we see more of this later. But he grabs her by the throat, slams her against the door. I mean, he's throttling her. But it's okay because she's turned on by this. Okay, she's encouraging his violence by, suggesting that it's just her kink. And it's a good thing it turns out it's Rand's kink too, So they bang, and then the next time we see them, they're in bed together, and he kind of goes, I don't want to hurt you. So I think that what the show is trying to do is tell us that, yes, he was starting to go mad, and that's why he did try to throttle her. But then the rest of this kind of doesn't make sense, because she starts talking about, when I'm with you, I get to forget somebody when I'm with you, I get to pretend that you're somebody who I can't forget, or something. It doesn't really matter. And she says, and it's, you're obviously trying to forget somebody that you're having trouble forgetting. And like, maybe that's how we work together. We both get to help each other in that way. And they kind of leave it at, I guess they're going to stay together. How does this solve the issue that he just brought up? Like I just don't understand this. Like, if he's worried about killing her, this doesn't make sense. Like, why did they have him throttle her? How about he's not at that stage of going insane yet? How about he just, when he came home and was worried about the, one power taking over him in that one moment, she starts to kind of put the moves on him, and he realizes that he's getting caught up in the moment, and it helps him to forget about what just happened. It's a psychological relief to him, and that's enough. And then here, don't have him bring up the I don't want to hurt you at all. Maybe have him just starting to wonder, is this somebody I'm going to end up hurting? Or don't even bring that up at all. I don't know. He has decided at this point that I'm going to kill her, but I'm okay with it.
And the truth is, I wasn't that into her.
Okay. But in the final scene with Rand, we have him going to work the next day, and yes, the orderly is going to be out for a while, and now Rand is supposed to take over that other orderly's job, which is out in the garden with the celebrity insane people. And we see that the person he's going to be working with is Logain. And at that point, it was obvious to me that all of this was his plan. I mean, I knew that it was going to be Logain in the garden anyway, but now it was like confirmed. His whole reason for being at the insane asylum was to get to Logain. So it erased any positive thoughts that I had of him being at the insane asylum, even when he was being kind to this old guy, because we saw he's being kind to the old guy, but he was also getting lessons from him, which is not believable. I mean, you would never learn how to sword fight like this, but whatever, okay.
We're visual learners, right, guys?
Yeah, like Jennifer Beals on Flashdance. She had to watch a lot of welding before she got good.
So it took any positivity away from his character, because it was like he was only like this because he was trying to get something that he wanted. So Rand actually felt kind of like a villain here. It would have been really nice to have seen more positivity from him that didn't have something that didn't make it feel like he was just using everybody for his own gain. But I do actually think this was a good place to end it with Logain, because I think a lot of people who've been watching the show will be very excited to see what's going to happen between Rand and Logain. Like, what is their discussion going to be about? My only question, knowing where this goes, is why the hell would Rand want to go to Logain for learning how to use the one power without going insane, when Logain is obviously insane? I mean, Rand never saw Logain not insane. I mean, there was never a single encounter before this where Rand saw Logain in a moment of sanity. He was obviously insane from the start. So I just don't understand why Rand would have thought that Logain can teach him how to not lose himself.
Oh, if only we were amongst friends or sane persons.
And if you'll remember from season 1, it was explained to Rand by Moiraine that if you channel, it's going to bring you closer to going insane. And I think she also implied that you won't be able to help it, you're going to channel anyway, something like this. But basically, hold off going insane by not channeling as long as you can. So it's been explained to Rand that no matter what, he's going to be able to channel. It will be a second nature sort of thing to him. So why does he need to be taught how to channel? And again, why would you go to somebody who is insane? I guess this is just the only man that he's ever heard of that can channel. Like if this was my story, let's say the books didn't exist and I was just writing the show and this was the script I was handed, I would have said, why don't you have Rand looking for other men who can channel? Like he's constantly out trying to catch word, and maybe he's tailing a bunch of red Aja or something. That would have been interesting. It actually would have been a good way to get him to fall. Maybe he's following some red Aja and he thinks that they're going to be taking him to a man who can channel, but then they end up getting closer to Falm and that's how he gets there, whatever, anyway. But as for Rand, and do I think that they did a good job with him? I think obviously no. I think that there was a lot of stuff that should have happened before this that they didn't do, and they could have done it in episode 1. They could have had him on the road meeting Selene. They could have had at least the meeting between him and Selene. Don't ask your audience to invent something in their own heads that's like, oh, this is a believable way for them to have gotten together. That's just, you know what it looks like to me? It looks like they had no idea how to pull this off in a believable way. So they said, let's just leave it open to the audience's interpretation. That's not clever. That's 1, lazy, and 2, just poor writing. Next, we're moving on to Moiraine and Lan. And I love that in the first scene with them, we've got Adelaise getting a little thigh squeeze on Lan. You go for it, Adelaise. Why not? But Adelaise basically says, my sister and I have agreed to go with you to the White Tower. And I really didn't understand why Moiraine tells her,
I've been banned from the White Tower or whatever.
Boring. We already knew that.
She said it as if she was informing Adelaise for the first time, but Adelaise definitely would have known all of this already. Why did she say that line? It makes no sense. I feel like it was supposed to be like, oh, it looks like her way of dodging the truth that she's going to the White Tower, but then we find out later she's not going to the White Tower. She has no intention of going there, so why? I just don't get it. And then we show that there has been absolutely zero change in Moraine's behavior, and this is such YA miscommunication type drama that is very immature. I don't know why they did this. I have been informed that this doesn't happen in the books, so it's totally contrived and it's totally juvenile. I do not for 1 second believe that the characters in the show actually had a close relationship before. I don't believe it, because this is not how mature people who have had a close relationship and been in a close relationship behave ever, no matter what the circumstances. And Moiraine is continuing to be unlikable, pushing in another jab at Lan, asking him to tell somebody else to saddle her horse because he's too weak and she doesn't want her saddle to slip. The next scene we have is Verin and Adelaise and Thomas and Moiraine and Lan have made camp on top of a hill overlooking where the White Tower is. And Verin says something that to me just negates what the whole big mystery of season 1 was.
The eye of the Dark One is upon you, sister. Did you not think we would ask why? The dragon. I assume it's one of the boys you brought back to Tal Valon last autumn.
This man has been born again. We don't know where or to whom. If he was reborn as a girl or a boy.
I assume it's one of the boys you brought back to Tal Valon last autumn.
Bruh. You knew all along!
So Verin knew that it was going to be a boy. She never assumed it was going to be one of the girls that Moiraine brought. She wasn't fooled by the fact that Nynaeve is supposedly the most powerful channeler anybody's seen in 1,000 years. So, I don't know. I don't know what this means.
Who knows? Who knows anything?
But she sort of inserts herself in the quest, saying, look, there's a bunch of books at the White Tower that have prophecies and things about what's going to happen when the dragon is reborn, and I'm going to go and find those books. And I'm just thinking, didn't Moiraine already have all this stuff? Like, I mean, whatever. Okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it was just something that annoyed me because this was information that Moiraine already knew because she spent 20 years of her life trying to find out how she's going to discover the dragon reborn. And You would think she does that by researching this stuff. Anyway, Moiraine slowly pulls out a dagger like she's going to kill Perrin if Perrin knows, since Perrin knows, and she's like, does Thomas and Adelaide know also what? She's going to kill them too? I mean, she's just an idiot. How are you going to kill these people? I don't understand. But I guess she's powerful enough to take out a Fade, so she could easily kill all of them. Why does Moiraine need Lan? She doesn't. This is such shoddy inconsistency. But Moiraine tries to get Perrin to swear allegiance to the mission or whatever, but Perrin's like, how do I know that you or the dragon aren't going to go nuts, and then I have to kill you guys? So good on Perrin. Then in the next scene, we're still camped out overlooking the White Tower, and everybody starts reminiscing about how they met each other. And I do at this point have to comment that they have inserted sex into a lot of these scenes, or at least discussion of it or implication of it.
If there's one thing I know, it's that sex sells. So all we have to do is find some sex and sell it.
But they haven't actually gone the full Monty like they did in Game of Thrones. And I just don't think that the people who would have watched Game of Thrones only for the sex would feel like their expectations have been met in this show. Like, we never even saw any skin on Nynaeve. If you're gonna try to draw in that audience, you're not showing enough. I'm sorry. And I'm not sitting here saying I would like to see more. I'm just saying that you're doing it wrong if that's why you're doing it. So if you're not going to do it right, why do it at all?
All I want to do is have sex. Sex, sex, and more sex.
So, tell me exactly what you mean by sex.
You know, sex. Holding hands, eating ice cream.
Oh.
So Thomas, apparently, his sex life disappeared as soon as he chose Perrin to be his, like, I'll be bonded to you. Then when we get to Lan, and I loved the way Adelaide totally romanticized what she figured their meeting must have been, that he was, riding across the borderlands on his black steed with his hair whipping in the wind. I thought that was great. And to me, it's even more hilarious that we get almost this exact image later on in the show. But yeah, Lan and Moiraine explain how they met, and Moiraine says she was following him all day. Lan thought that she was an assassin or something that had been sent by his, I forget what the word is, but basically Perrin explains that it was an older woman who takes the virginity of a young man to show him the ways of love. And I've heard that this was totally invented for the show, so again, it's like they're trying to put in sex stuff. But unless you're going to show us the sex, why are you doing this? You're constantly teasing the audience that, like, oh, there's a ton of sex in this show.
Sex, 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 and more sex.
If only you quit talking about it.
I have not seen the sex. Where is it? I haven't seen any of it. So then Moiraine says that she was following him and found him meditating by a river or something, and she tried to sneak up and grab his sword, but Lan came over, grabbed her by the scruff of her shirt, and threw her in the river.
I wish I could have seen that.
And that is when Adelaide says, you see, that's the nice thing about the right warder. Like, it's the right warder because the right one won't save you from Trollocs or whatever. They'll save you from yourself. I liked this because it foreshadows where this is going to go with Lan, and probably what he should have done sooner, but I don't like that this came from Adelaide, because she was such an ignoramus about what the relationship is between a warder and an Aes Sedai before.
I think you're taking this all too personally. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. It only affects you if you let it, and I am unequivocally unaffected by it.
You are not a warder.
So I don't believe that this would have come from her. I think it should have come probably from Thomas or Perrin. I would have liked it from either of them, but I think it would have been nice coming from Thomas because then it would have shown that he recognizes his worth in the eyes of his Aes Sedai. Before we keep going, I just want to take a second to tell you about a video podcast that I was on with Amy Stewart. Amy is a lifelong fan of the Wheel of Time book series. She invited me on to talk about season 2, and this was after I had watched all the way up through season 7, but before the 8 premiere came out. So I think you'll really love hearing what we had to say. She actually made some pretty spot-on predictions for what she thought was going to happen in the finale. Go and check it out. The video link is up there in the upper right-hand corner. I think you'll have a pretty good time listening to that one. But be sure to go and check out her other videos. I watch all of them after I've finished my recordings, and I always learn something. Anyway, back to the review. Then the next scene doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. We've got them packing up to go on.
Say what now?
So why did they camp out? I thought that they were camping out for the night and like, we're going to wake up the next morning and go the rest of the way to the tower. But no, they built this big campfire and sat around telling stories to what? Rest for a couple of hours? Didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Anyway, Lan appears to be snooping through Moraine's saddlebags, and I would have really liked to see that this was actually an accidental occurrence coming across the poem. Instead, it's like he's snooping through her saddlebags and finds the poem and then quickly stashes it in his shirt when she shows up. Let's have some shots of him doing more to like get the saddle and the horse ready for whatever, and then maybe he touches one of the saddlebags and hears paper in there and just curiously looks in and sees what it is or something. I don't know. It just would have been nice to not have him snooping around. And then I don't like that Moiraine doesn't seem to notice that it's gone. This to me is sort of reminiscent of the sa'angreal that she had in the end of season 1. We saw her put it in a cloth in the prologue of episode 1, and then we never see it again. And then she brings it out at the end of episode 8. Like the sa'angreal didn't seem to be that important because we never saw her making efforts to keep it secret and hidden or safe. Like she didn't give it to Lan when the White Cloaks showed up to search the horses. So she has this poem that she got a hold of and it was very important. I mean, I get this is the thing that is why she is acting the way she is acting. And it's in her saddlebags and she doesn't miss it. We never see her like recognize that it's not there anymore ever in the rest of the freaking show. So is it not that important that she should have it on her person all the time? Like, okay. Then we have this conversation where Lan says, I should have sensed that the Fades were coming. And, he's apologizing to her for not being there or whatever. He doesn't need to apologize, but because he was there in time to save her.
We're sorry. I'm deeply sorry. Sorry.
How did he sense that the Fades were coming? The show needs to explain what has happened to Lan and Moiraine. Now, somebody in the comments said Moiraine didn't shield him at the end of season 1. Remember when she went off into the Blight and he was like, she's shielded me, so she doesn't want to be followed. Someone in the comments said that later in season 2, it's revealed that she wasn't shielding him, she actually severed the bond.
I read once there's a way to release the bond.
So are we supposed to think that it feels the same? That being shielded from your Aes Sedai feels identical to the bond being severed, so you literally don't feel like you're connected at all anymore? And it was also explained to me much earlier in these reviews that when you are bonded to an Aes Sedai, you acquire certain powers, like certain strength abilities, the ability to sense evil, like he should be able to sense the Fades. That's why he's saying I should have been able to sense them. So this conversation here is telling me one of two things. Either even after your bond has been severed, it no longer exists, you still retain the powers that come from being bonded to an Aes Sedai. So why not just bond all of the warders and then sever the bonds?
I am a genius!
And the second thing it might be telling me is that Lan actually thinks he is still bonded to Moiraine in some way. But that doesn't make sense if he recognizes that she is telling the truth, that she has been severed. This has not been explained at all. And I think this is laziness on the part of the show writers, again, because they want the audience to always not quite know what's going on, and then we'll be like, oh, wow, when we get to the reveal of what's actually happening. But that's not what happens at all. What happens is we assume it could be anything. So when we get to the reveal of what's actually going on, we go, okay, that's what was going on.
This is disappointing as hell.
How about he no longer feels the bond. The bond is no longer in existence between him and Moiraine. And he's lost his ability to sense things like the Fades or whatever. And this is why he, says, I wish I could have felt that the Fades were coming. I wanted to be there for you sooner. Then what happens is when we get to the reveal that the bond hasn't been severed, she's just been shielded so hard that it severed the bond. We'll be like, oh, she's not severed from she's not cut off from the one power. She's just shielded really, really strong from it so that she actually feels like she's been cut off from the one power. Like it's a more powerful cut off from the one power than Aes Sedai usually are capable of doing to other Aes Sedai. Whatever, my brain is getting tied into knots just trying to justify what the show was doing or figure out what they should have done, because they've done so many things wrong and different here and contradictory to its own rules that there's no point in trying to hash it out. It's basically saying 2 + 2 = 6, and I'm trying to figure out how they got there. You didn't get there. So then we get Moiraine explaining that the reason why she picked Lan to be her warder is because they were walking into some town together after the whole tossing her in the river thing happened. And there were spikes with Trolloc heads on it as warnings, don't, mess with us. And it didn't faze him. And she's like, I couldn't even imagine how brave you must be. And she knew from that moment on that when the time came, he would be able to survive on his own. And that's when she orders him to continue on to the White Tower on his own, and she will go on alone.
Bad idea. This is a bad idea.
First of all, why does she think that she doesn't need him anymore? I don't get that. I don't get that at all. Like, she's at her most vulnerable, and she's like, you go on alone. You're not going to be part of my journey anymore. She just said that he was incredibly courageous and brave, but she doesn't need him. I guess what she thinks she has to do isn't that important, and like, well, it's okay if I die because what I'm doing is not important.
What? Nothing about this makes sense.
Lan tries to insist that he's not going to leave without her, so she then proceeds to tell Lan about how dangerous their enemies are. She says that we didn't actually seal the Dark One at the Eye of the World, we accidentally set his strongest lieutenant free. She says he's one of the Forsaken, not the Dark One, and yet he's so powerful that with a flick of his wrist, he cut her off from the One Power. And then Lan expresses some doubt that Ishamael would be capable of doing something like that by himself because it takes 8 Aes Sedai to cut somebody off from the One Power. Turns out he's actually right, but let's ignore that for now. And Moiraine is like, you idiot, you have no idea how powerful the Forsaken are. Like, you have no idea what kind of forces we're up against because I've never told you. And he's like, well, then tell me what I'm up against. I mean, remember, this is a guy who pledged his life to her, who promised to die before her. So she had absolutely no respect for that oath. And then he figures out what game she's playing, which I don't think she's playing a game. I think she's just being a bitch. And says, I know what you're trying to do. And, you can't push me away, whatever. And she goes, well, Rand is alive. And like, this seems to affect him. I mean, obviously it would be a shock, but I don't think it would change how he feels. I don't know why this would be the clincher. Like, why would this be the piece of information that makes him go, oh, I guess I don't want to be with you anymore. And she says that the reason why she didn't tell him is because she's loyal to the dragon above him. And Lan reminds her that he took an oath to protect her with his life. And she just basically says, I didn't have any respect for that oath at all. And then she's like, and besides, you can't help me anymore. Without the bond, you're basically useless. Which is a terrible thing to say, and it's untrue. Because then she says, if it wasn't for Verin and Adelace, I would be dead. No, without Lan and Verin and Adelace, you would be dead. As a matter of fact, without Lan, you would be dead. Without Verin and Adelace, you and Lan would be dead. That's how it works. Lan absolutely saved Moraine's life, and she's basically saying, you did shit. And having seen season 2 all the way to the end, I can tell you this is not forgivable behavior from her. This is extremely immature on the part of Moiraine. And the only acceptable thing to come out of this would be for Lan to return the sentiments. Lan is a better person than Moiraine. Moiraine deserves nothing, and she should die.
That's a little harsh. I don't think that's a little harsh. I think that's the truth.
She should ride off by herself and get attacked by some Fades and go, oh no, I wish there was somebody here who could kill these Fades for me.
Who could that be, I wonder?
And then Moiraine does something absolutely bizarre to me. She orders Lan to go to the tower again and says, you're going to the tower. Adelace and her warders are going to take you there. And she says, I will have Adelace take your bond by force, if I must. She has found a fellow Aes Sedai who's willing to enslave somebody against their will.
What kind of freaks are you people?
And remember, Adelace doesn't know what's going on with the whole end of the world, whatever. So Adelace was like, you're going to give me Lan? Like, I might be able to just take him and he's mine, even if he doesn't want to be? I'm in. What kind of person is Adelace? And what kind of person is Moiraine? She is forcefully enslaving Lan at this point, and she has found somebody else who wants to forcefully enslave Lan too, and will do so just because. And yeah, Lan feels totally betrayed because I thought that we were in this together as equals, but we were never equals in your eyes, were we? Tell me the truth. You can't lie. And she goes, we were never equals. And I know what that comes out to later. And quite honestly, when she said we were never equals, because I know how Aes Sedai kind of skirt around the truth, I knew exactly what she meant, and I still didn't buy it. They could not have made a more unlikable character than Moiraine. I think this is probably the most unlikable thing. And I'm not saying this just because I enjoy the Lan character. I mean, the Lan character is kind of bugging me lately, but what she is doing is so heinous, it's not forgivable. This is pure abuse. She needs Lan. She needs somebody to protect her sorry ass or she will be dead. And she doesn't respect his oaths or his morals or anything that's important to him because she's throwing away 20 years in the trash. No, this was not a 20-year relationship closer than marriage, closer than a parent and child. Not believable. But final notes on this arc, I think, are that I wouldn't have done it. I would prefer to have done nothing at all. Don't have them in this season if you can't think of something for them to do that is good, because so far, in just 2 episodes, Moiraine has been made so unlikable that I personally would prefer that she's dead. The show would be more enjoyable without her in it. But if you did want to have her in this season, it has to be a lot reduced, because if there's not much for her to do, then okay, fine, have her in the beginning, show that she's off to do her own thing, and then you just don't have to have her in the rest of the season. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. Moving on though, otherwise we'll never move on. Okay, so now we're into the Perrin arc, and first of all, I just have to say I was mistaken about season 1. I thought that guy was Ingtar, and that's not Ingtar. Thank you to the commenter who told me this. I went and I looked it up, and you're right. So Ingtar, you are no longer risen from the dead, you're just a guy. But here we've got them on the road tracking Padan Fain and going into the village. And this first scene is one that does happen in The Great Hunt, except that it's Rand who has this vision of the past instead of Perrin. So I don't like what they've done here with Perrin having this vision, because they've given the hint that it's part of his wolfy powers, because they have that wolf howl in his head and his eyes turn yellow as he's seeing this vision, which is the exact same thing that they did in the first episode of season 2 when he saw all of the Tuatha'an were dead. I am now going to expect that any time that Perrin wants to look into the past, he will be able to do this, because that is one of his magic powers. Because I don't believe for 1 second that he is seeing something that the wolves saw, because there were wolves in this family's dining room before the shades came, or fades or whatever came and attacked them. I'll ask an expert if this is a wolf power. Sorsha, can you see the past? This makes no sense at all. And it makes no sense that this would be a power related to his connection with the wolves, because, at least as far as I understand the wolf brother power, because the wolf brother power seems to be that he can see the things and smell the things or whatever that the wolves can. I never once got the impression that the wolves can see or hear things from the past. It's just, no, makes no sense. I'm not really sure why Perrin has a sword. I mean, it would have been nice to have seen him with an axe, which is kind of his signature thing that he has in the books. But okay, he's got a sword. A note just to start is that I really don't see the hurry in these guys. And somebody actually pointed out in the comments that nobody has explained what the Horn of Valir is or what it does. Nobody in the show up until this point. Have they? At least by the end of episode 1, I think that we should all be clear on what it is that the horn does. That you blow the horn and the heroes of old are risen from the dead, basically, and they come to your aid. And it's whoever blows the horn, that's who they come to the aid of, which would make it a very scary thing that the enemy has it, because if they blow the horn, they get the heroes of old working for them. But yeah, the show doesn't explain it, and they don't seem to be in that much of a rush, so whatever. If this is a Wolf Brother power, I expect to see it more than just this instance and the instance before. I expect to see this power being used going forward. And I don't think that it is. And then Perrin turns around and looks at Elias, who he should have recognized has the yellow eyes also. And he goes to Elias, he's like, whatever it is that you're doing to me, I want no part of it. And Elias goes, that's not the way that it works. I despise this cryptic talk, like it's so contrived. You're doing this in order for the audience to go like, what is it? What is it this all a part of? Like, what's going on? Like, this is, I mean, how hard would it have been for, I'm not forcing you to do anything. This is just what happens to people like us. Why would you delay having that moment? Why would you? You do it because you want to prolong the mystery. Okay.
Mysterious mysteries of strange mystery. Now, harder hitting, faster paced, and even more mysterious.
At this point in Perrin's arc, I would have introduced that Elias is a wolf brother and has conversations with Perrin about being a wolf brother. Or at least at the beginning of this episode, you and I are the same. But no, we're going to drag that out as long as we can.
Just get it over with.
Then this part doesn't make any sense. So they come across first they come across a meal that was left in a hurry, and Uno comes to the conclusion that Paddin Fain and his gang saw us coming and they skedaddled as quickly as they could. And then they find the Fade that has been is basically crucified on a door, and they're freaking out about it, like, what the hell could do this to a Fade? And in the book, I was like, damn, this is freaky, because in the books, if you cut the head off of a Fade, that head still lives, and the body, like, they're not dead. They go on for until, I think, nightfall or until daylight or something like that. Like, they won't die right away. That's how tough they are. And they're extremely superhuman, fast, and strong, which is why we all assumed Tom was dead and why it makes no sense for Moiraine to still be alive, but I guess the Fades aren't that powerful. So this shouldn't be that shocking of an event, first of all, finding a Fade crucified on the door, because anybody could do that. But they're acting like nobody could do this, like this is an impossible thing to happen, which is how they behave in the book, rightfully so. But then Perrin goes,
do you think Paddin Fain did that?
And I'm going, why would they think Paddin Fain did that? Paddin Fain is with the Fades. Perrin, at the end of season 1, saw Paddin Fain with 2 Fades who were acting like his cronies, doing a bunch of killing, and then he left with them like they're his bodyguards. Why would you assume Paddin Fain would kill his own bodyguards? And in the book, it's left a mystery. You don't know who did this. So what the hell? Why would you assume Paddin Fain did this? This is giving away a huge mystery. And when you're doing so much to try to invent mystery for your audience, why would you ruin one of the cool mysteries in the book? Why? I mean, in the book, I went on from this point going, what other badass is there out there that we have to be worried about now? And are they on our side? Or are they somebody that we should be, like, afraid of also? Like a worse bad guy. A bad guy who's worse than the Fades and wants to kill the Fades, but also might want to kill us. That is such a compelling mystery, and they just blew it right here. Then we have the Shynarans and Perrin arriving at this town where they're going to stay for the night. And the first thing that Ingtar tells them is that, they should ask around if anybody knows about whereabouts of Paddin Fain or whatever it is that killed that Fade. And I was hoping at this point that we were going to see that we were going to see some questioning going on. And this would have been a great time if you didn't reveal that Paddin Fain is a suspect. This would have been a great time to be like, well, we saw Paddin Fain, but we didn't see these Fades that you're talking about. Or we saw the Fades, but we didn't see Paddin Fain, like they're not together anymore. Like that would have been a first hint that maybe it was Paddin Fain, but it wouldn't be so obvious that it is Paddin Fain that the audience might actually catch this super easily. But either way, I wanted to see that sort of thing going on, and we don't see that. They arrive at town and we never once see them questioning these guys about like, hey, did you see anything weird happening? All that happens is they show up, they smell a stinky fish. Loyal is like, ooh, I really like that dish. Actually, it's really good. Uno's like, yeah, why am I not surprised? And then Perrin's asking Elias, why aren't you coming into the inn with us? And Elias is like, I prefer to sleep under the stars. And then he tells Perrin, like, that's not your pack, by the way. The Shynarans, they're not your guys. It would have been nice if at this point, or at least after this point, we had Perrin seeking out Elias separately to talk to him. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on, but what is going on? Something like that, and initiate the conversation there. But they don't take this there. They have him disappear into the inn, and then the next time that we see him, it's the attack on the inn. And the director took a page right out of Peter Jackson's book. This was almost identical to that scene in The Lord of the Rings when the hobbits are in Bree, they've just met Aragorn, and you see the Black Riders sneak into their room and slowly attack them. And it's in silence. I love that. I do actually, by the way, like the Shan Chan armor. I think it looks scary. I think that was the point. In the books, they're described as looking like insects. I think this big smiley face with the mesh or whatever it is looks pretty cool. It looks like great. I don't know. It looks like teeth. It's not exactly insects, but I still think it looks scary, which I think was the main point. Scary and kind of alien. But anyway, I have a lot to say about this attack in the night. First of all, it would have been nice to have had some sort of an attack scene. Like maybe they almost catch up to Pat and Fane in the Fades, but a bunch of Trollocs are there and they have to battle the Trollocs. And so you see the Shienarans like defending themselves and Perrin's like with them. Everybody's got their backs to each other. That would have been nice to have seen in episode 1 before he wrote that letter to Egwene and Nynaeve, where he says, this is what I like about being with these guys. But we didn't get that. But anyway, we get that here. Perrin is dragged out of the inn. And I mean, it looks like the actor really was pulled down those stairs. So good job there. That must have hurt. There's one actor in the inn as Perrin's being dragged out who is doing a very nice job with his sword fighting scenes, but I hate the way that this is shot. Too many frequent cuts. Like, show us the action, please. Let us see it happen. This guy obviously knows what he's doing, so let's show it off a little bit. Then as Perrin's being dragged out, and I don't know why he's being dragged out rather than killed. I'm not really sure why there's all this violence happening, but nobody seems to be getting killed, okay? But as he's getting dragged out of the hotel, they show a stunt shot of a guy on the second story falling out of the balcony on the second story and into a, I don't know, hay bale or something. And they show that in 4 separate shots, and that is so awkward. Just 2, please, next time. I mean, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're all from these weird angles. I think it's so corny when this is done to like show off how cool an action shot is. It's almost like they just figured that all of these angles were so spectacular, they couldn't decide which one to use, so they decided to use all of them. When really, just 2, please. Show 1 to see that he is really falling from far away, and then another from a different angle that you think also looks pretty good. That should be enough. I still think it would be more impressive if we didn't have a second shot at all. It was just the wide, but I get it. They wanted to draw attention to the one moment. Maybe have a tracking shot. So the wide and then a tracking shot. That would have been kind of neat. Anyway, then Perrin has grabbed, like, I don't know, a piece of driftwood and he smacks the 2 Seanchan that are dragging him. So then Ingtar and Uno save Perrin's butt by taking out the 2 guys that are dragging him. And Ingtar is like, stand your ground. And so everybody kind of gets up and they start fighting. And we see that Uno and Ingtar are badasses. Awesome. I love good fights, but I can hardly see what's happening because of the quick cuts and the light being so dark. Some of this shaky cam might have been added in post, as in it was filmed more stable, and then they go in afterwards and they add the camera shake. Like the editor is like, let's make it shake more.
Yes, more.
Don't do this. Don't do it. But Perrin is standing there in awe of Ingtar and Uno, and he hears Loial screaming. We can see that Loial has been roped by like a bunch of Seanchan, and he's not able to escape. And Ingtar's like,
go rescue him.
Which is a little bit awkward of a line. Like, go help him, but okay, go rescue him. That's fine too. So Perrin hauls ass over there and pushes one guy away and tackles the guy who's on top of Loial. And then Loial is able to basically clobber 2 other guys, and he's basically set himself free at that point. So I do like seeing Perrin finally fighting. It would have been nice, because Perrin is our MC in this scene, to have more close-ups of Perrin in the action, like to get his emotional response to how he himself is behaving in all of this. And I mean during his fight. So when he's wrestling that guy in the water, maybe have Perrin's moment of I've killed somebody be here. Like the first time that he really kills somebody intentionally, and this might be a moment where it was a justified kill. Have that happen here, where he strangles the guy and then realizes what he's kind of done.
You killed him.
And then have him snap out of it and like, oh yeah, I'm in the middle of a battle. But we didn't get that. So we didn't get the reason why the audience should be emotionally invested in this particular moment. What we do get though is we get to see Loial really is a super badass. I mean, he's shoving guys and like destroying the houses that he shoves the guys into. That's good. We also get that one Shienarn who was inside the inn without his shirt on, but now he's come out and he's wearing a shirt or like armor. When did you have the time to do that? So he took out the guys in the inn, and then nobody noticed him while he was suiting up, and then he runs out there and he's doing his fight scene. Now, I think that whoever this guy is, he's either a stunt person or he just knows what the hell he's doing, because he looks pretty good. Like, he looks like he knows how to handle a weapon, he's making quick pivots, and he's making eye contact before he's hitting, so I like this. It's kind of a trick in theater that you would look before you hit. So you're not just whacking around like this, like you automatically know what's happening. You have to see something before you hit. Anyway, you get the idea. But this guy looks like he can actually move, and they wanted to show that off. That's fine, but it's a little weird that he's got his shirt on. That makes no sense. And I'm not just saying this because I would like to see him without his shirt on. I promise.
I don't believe that for a second.
God bless Pilates. It saved my life.
We get Perrin and Loial sort of teaming up the way that we saw Inktar and Uno teamed up earlier, and they're kicking ass. I like that he's using sort of a club and his fists, kind of trying to emphasize that Perrin is big. Like, to me, he doesn't seem that much bigger than a bunch of the other guys that he's with, but I mean, it's okay. I think that they're trying to figure out how to make up for that. I just wish the camera was on Perrin more during this fight. He's the one we should be the most concerned with. Then Ingtar calls all of the Shienarans to him by his side. They all get there. They're ready to kick some more ass. And there's just one shot where they're standing there in a line, ready to do action. And they look like video game characters in like Mortal Kombat, like getting ready to do something, but not doing something. It's just a little silly, but it wasn't the worst thing ever. Anyway, then a bunch of Shan-Chan show up, and with them are two of those slave Aes Sedai and their slave driver people. And they pretty much know that they're toast right away, because the slave drivers say, you know, go get them in whatever their own language is. And then the Aes Sedai girls basically make a bunch of explosions happen, and that's the end of that. They wake up the next morning and everybody has been subdued. The whole town is out sitting down in the sand, and all the soldiers are kind of sitting there too. Like, there's nothing that they can do because the Aes Sedai can kick their asses without even trying. And this enormous palanquin comes in, and it looks like one of those Mayan temples with the like steps, you know, the Mayan pyramids, I mean. And up there, we've got a lady who, the fashion is very reminiscent of like Tang Dynasty. I'm thinking specifically the colors. This would be Tang Dynasty China, where I think it was some concubine who was really inspired by the colors of some bird, where it was like a bluish teal color and sort of a rust color mixed, and everybody was wearing that color combination. This is in real life. And you'll see it a lot in Tang Dynasty fashion, I think, and beyond. It was just, and it's a good combo. So I like what I'm seeing here. I like the costume. I think it's very intricate. I think it's a little weird, like how they bring this palanquin with them everywhere as they're conquering places. That's awfully inconvenient, and it would take a lot of manpower to haul this thing around, I would think. Unless they just have their Aes Sedai sort of float it around most of the time. I guess that's what they're doing. But with this evil Shan-Chan lady is Ishamael, and she goes, "Are they ready?" And he goes,
"Well, they'll have to be, won't they?"
And he spots Perrin, and he's like, So, okay, great cliffhanger for the end of this. We want to see what the hell's going to happen between Ishamael and Perrin. But final thoughts on this arc. I'm so glad that Perrin was involved in some sort of a conflict. I think I have already talked about how I wish there was more focus on him and his psychological and emotional responses to this conflict, but whatever. Okay, anyway, this is where we are with Perrin. And going forward, I'm definitely curious to see what Ishamael's plans are for Perrin. Unfortunately, we discover that not much. There's not much of a plan here, because they don't do much with this in the show. They kind of just get him out of it. Moving on, we're going to talk about Matt. So the first scene that we have with Matt, I believe, is him talking to Liandrin, and then we see him get back to picking at the wall.
So what changed?
They didn't need to have this. It's like they're sort of reminding the audience of what his situation is, but we already remember from season 1. The only new information that we got in this scene with Matt was that Liandrin has told him that we're keeping you here because we want to make sure that the effects of the Knife of Shadow Lagoth aren't working on you anymore. And he's like, I haven't touched that thing in 6 months, and you can see I'm not going nuts or whatever. That should have happened in episode 1, because then at least we would have gotten something interesting out of that. It's like they had the mystery of why he was there. And we're like, he doesn't know why he's there. She isn't telling him why he's there. She's just tormenting him, and that's it. But then here, she just very openly like, well, you're here because we need to make sure that that knife isn't affecting you anymore. Well, why didn't you tell him this sooner?
I'm just full of surprises.
In the next scene, we've got Matt finally breaking through where he's been scratching away the grout. He pushes the stone out and it goes to another cell. And who's on the other side? It's Min. Now, Min, in the books, has revealed that she had a vision that has told her that she is going to fall in love with Rand. And she's like, I don't want to fall in love with Rand. I don't want to be one of his women, because apparently he's going to have 3 and she knows she's going to be one of them. And she doesn't like the idea, but it's kind of a fun bit of internal conflict for her. She feels herself being drawn to him and wanting to be with him and like, I know I can help him, but at the same time, she's like, I hate that this is happening to me. It's fun. But okay, so in the show, I don't know if this very obvious romance that they're sparking between Matt and Min is going to happen in the books. I don't know if that ever happens in the books. And if it doesn't, I see this as being another thing that the show has invented, obviously, but I see it leading towards yet another love triangle between Rand and a woman and one of his friends. Why? This is so stupid.
Love triangles? They generate a 47% surge in trending topics on social platforms.
Fans will ship the out of you.
I want to leave.
It's already going to be weird between Rand and Min and Egwene, which is what we get. And then Rand and Elaine and Egwene and Min. Oh my gosh, please.
I don't think I can take this. I don't think I can take this.
It's very childish. This is like the YA-est YA romance thing that you can do.
Crude methods, but effective.
It's supposed to be much more mature than this. Anyway, they don't really exchange a whole lot of information about each other, just that they're both prisoners of the blonde lady, and then she asks for a spoon or something so she can help him dig, and then she starts helping him to dig. In the next scene, they've broken 3 blocks out. I don't see why the 2 on the side were necessary for her to get through, but that's what they did. And she has a bottle of wine. She says, they usually let me have one every week or whatever, and so they decide they're gonna have a drink. And I don't know why they had Matt pour some of the wine into a glass, and then instead of giving her the bottle, which is what she reaches for, he gives her the glass. Like, I get the bottle, you get the glass.
That's just rude.
But then he asks her, why are you here? And she explains that she can see visions of the pattern, and, like she can see the future. And he's like,
so what?
He says, I thought it would be so much more interesting or whatever. She also tells the story of how she got caught. And honestly, the story that she gives, like, I was trying to run away, but the boat that I was on got caught in a storm. I ended up in Tar Valon, and I thought, well, you know what? It's such a big city. I guess maybe I can hide here. Maybe no one will notice me. But then a red Aja came into the bar and noticed me. I mean, I'm assuming that that's the story of how she got caught, but who recognized her? Who else knew about her? I guess all of the Aes Sedai knew that Min had this ability, but they were just kind of letting her stay in Faldara before. I don't know. But so Matt, when she has told him that she can see glimpses of the future, and he's like, it's uninteresting, she's like, that's not interesting to you? You don't want to know what I see when I look at you? And he goes, nah, I don't want to know about the shit that's headed my way. Which is fine, because they have made Matt out to have like a shit life and only shit happens to him. So, okay. It's not who he is in the book, but just considering who he is in the show, this makes sense. So good job there. But then Min does not ask Matt why he is there. And I would have liked to have seen Matt come up with some sort of an excuse, because that would have been a more natural conversation. And as we know, if you've watched all season 2, later it's going to be revealed that Min is a mole, and she is trying to befriend Matt so that she can spy on him in some way. I don't really know. But no matter what, it would have been more believable if she asked him, why are you here? Because that's how these conversations go. Why are you here? I'm here because of this. Why are you here? And then he explains. But at the end of this, he asks if she will visit again, and she's like,
well, obviously I'll have to check my diary, just see if I've got any time at all. Yes, it does seem that I have got a hole available. Window available.
Which is kind of a fun little back and forth. I didn't mind. But then she has a vision of Matt killing Rand. And she knows Rand and knows that he's the Dragon Reborn, which means now she knows that he's still alive. So why would she be okay with this happening? And like, why would she be okay with helping this guy? Because she essentially helps him going forward. But what are they trying to say here with this? If she knows that Rand is the Messiah, and this is the guy who kills him, why would she be okay with helping him unless she's a bad guy? I don't understand this. I would only be okay with this if we saw that Min had something very big at stake, like Liandrin is holding something over her head, and Min is desperately trying to protect it. And I'm not talking about even just her life. Like, let's make her more selfless. Somebody who's important to Min, her life or his life is at stake. And that's like what's at stake. You know, let the Messiah die and save my friends, or screw my friends and try to help the Messiah. I mean, I guess unless Min is like, no matter what I see, that is, you know, the way things turn out, which is kind of what she has said before. But then she has also said that she can't predict things accurately sometimes. Like, it's so over the place. It's all over the place. I can't. It's hard to comment on this when nothing has made sense before. So I think I've covered it enough.
Sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Move on.
But I think I would have actually taken this a step further, even though I know what they were trying to do. Like, we're going to have this be like the big hook that makes us want to watch the next episode. Like, oh my gosh, look at the suspenseful thing. Matt is going to kill Rand. How is that going to happen? Like, what? But I would have taken this a step further and shown what is their plan going forward, because they've broken through this wall and now they realize, well, that was a waste. So let's work together on a different wall or a different plan or something. And I would have had it in that conversation be where she has the vision and then you get the hook. Just because I think it would have, or maybe it wasn't even a conversation. Maybe we see that the next day they've started working on something else. But if you look at this episode, actually, it looks like the entire episode is a day, a night, and a day. Like the whole episode. So it felt like a long, long episode for only a day, night, and a day, but okay. Then we've got Egwene and Nynaeve, and I'm actually going to separate the two of them because they have totally different arcs in this episode. So let's look at Egwene first. It starts out with Egwene doing what she was doing at the beginning of episode 1, where she is doing her kitchen duty things, and she asks, where the heck is Nynaeve? And one of the other novices says, oh, Liandrin came and got her, and they took off to go do something. And nobody knows where that where was. And then we have actually probably one of the most likable character introductions in the entire series, and that is Elaine. I mean, my gosh, she's like a ray of sunshine compared to everybody else. None of the angst is there. I like that they have made Egwene more likable, but now they're going to start accentuating her jealousy, and I'm glad that they've got somebody like Elaine to kind of straighten her out, but let's get into it. So, she comes back from her kitchen duties to her room, and somebody new is moving in next door and has left a bunch of stuff in front of her room. So she brings the pillows over to the room and is like, hey, this is your stuff. And Elaine, not knowing what's going on, goes, oh, can you just put those over there? You know, and like kind of starts giving her orders. And Egwene like, you know, just so you know, you don't put this stuff in front of my door, please, going forward. It'd just be useful. And she's like, Elaine's like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know that you were a novice. I mean, she doesn't say this, but actually she does. She goes, oh, you're a novice too. And she's like, oh, thank goodness. I thought that they were not going to have me in the novices' quarters. Now they're doing with Elaine something that I wish that they were doing with Nynaeve, but they're not. And let me explain what they're not doing with Nynaeve. So Nynaeve, in the books, she acts very similarly to how she does in the show, although much less so. Like she's not always like this. But because we're in Nynaeve's head a lot of the time, we see that sometimes she has an outburst and she kind of regrets that she did it. She kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And I would love to have seen in the show that she regrets some of her behaviors, like that she's got this urge to just like fire back at people or start things with people, but she recognizes this is not a good thing, and she regrets that she does that and feels bad about it or ashamed of herself and wants to not do it. This makes her more likable. She's more self-aware. In the show, they don't show that ever. They never show that. They never show an expression of her going like, why did I do that? Like, how nice would it have been for her to lash out at somebody? And even if she walks away and turns a corner, we see her like going, oh, why did I do that? Or something, like see the expression on her face, but we never get those opportunities. In fact, we often have her bad behavior being rewarded. For instance, when she met Lan, and he had her tied up, and she threatens him and informs him that she is threatening him, and he lets her go anyway. We also have her doing things that are just stupid. Like, she just makes herself look dumb. But with Egwene, we're getting all of that, and it's what makes her likable. And she's doing things that would be very snobbish and should be unlikable, but because she is doing these things and then immediately realizing, oh my gosh, I'm being a snob, or I'm being presumptuous, and that was so rude. We see that realization in her facial expressions and in her behavior, because she immediately changes course and oh my gosh, she doesn't say I'm sorry, which is, Nynaeve doesn't say she's sorry, but you can tell that Elaine was sorry for what she did. How do we know that she's sorry for what she did? Because she looked awkward and then she changed course. She course corrected, I guess you could say would be a better way to phrase it. And she does it here. She assumed Egwene was one of the maids or whatever. And then when she realized that she's not, she's like, oh, you're a novice too. It's obvious that was a stupid thing for me to assume. And then she goes, I have no idea how to do this with my rooms. It's just so tiny in here. I've seen closets that are bigger. Could I see what you've done with your room? And then she goes over to Egwene's room and she's like, oh, I see that you've just moved in here too. My gosh, my room was full of a bunch of junk too. And then you see the realization, this is your stuff, it's not junk. And she's like, oh, you're not just moved in either. She's so obviously embarrassed that Egwene is able to no, I didn't just move in. Then Elaine tries to make up for it by noticing the blanket on Egwene's bed and says, oh, this is lovely stitching. Stitching? I mean, as far as I can tell, that's weaving, but okay. Anyway, maybe they thought that saying weaving twice would be too much for the audience because, the weaves, but whatever. Anyway, Elaine starts smiling and Egwene is like, why are you smiling like this? And Elaine is like, oh, I'm just so happy that I get to live with all the normal folk. And she's like, why do you think you wouldn't be able to live with us? And she, again, but you can tell she's trying to be cautious in how she's doing this, but she still feels embarrassed having to speak the truth, which is, I thought I wouldn't be allowed to stay here because I'm the daughter heir. And Egwene's like, the what? And she's like, I am Elaine whatever, the princess basically. And she's like, you're basically my subject.
She's totally rich because her dad invented toaster strudel.
The way she delivered that was so nice because it showed that she felt really awkward having to say that. And the two of them have a bit of not a chuckle, but they're both amused at how awkward this is. And I liked that. Great way to bond these two young ladies. And I love what Elaine says after this. After they've introduced themselves to each other. She goes, they say that some of the greatest pairings in the history of the world were formed between novices in adjacent rooms. And she says, these two other ladies who I'm assuming are super famous met just like this. And she goes, don't you wonder what the future has in store for you and me? Which is great foreshadowing, I'm assuming. I haven't gotten to the two of them doing anything great yet because I'm only in book 2, but I can see that they're sort of a pair in getting in and out of trouble together. And I like this because even the music getting a little mystical underneath all of that, it kind of insinuates that yes, something great is happening here. So as far as arcs go with Egwene, and I guess Elaine now is going to be a character who I'll be watching as well, I like this. I think this is a good intro. I think that early on, they're insinuating that there's going to be something special between these ladies. They're going to do amazing things together. And by Elaine comparing them to two other famous figures in history who met just like this, we're kind of going, oh yeah, maybe this will be something special. So even without the two of them doing something special, this is a good example of how to tell the audience to be excited about something in a way that doesn't feel exactly like they're telling us, even though that's exactly what they're doing. It's a clever way to show instead of telling, even though you're telling us by showing us. So it's her being excited about making a new friend and thinking maybe this will be the beginning of something great. And she's doing all this thinking out loud. So the audience gets to be in on the excitement of this might be something awesome. So I like this. Well done. Then in the next scene, Egwene is giving Elaine a tour, and Egwene figures out that Elaine didn't really need a tour of the tower, and Elaine reveals, yeah, actually, I've been coming here every year for I don't know, she said 6 years or something like that. But she really didn't want to miss an opportunity to get to know Egwene better. And that just makes Elaine so likable. She's willing to make herself look stupid or ignorant about something and let Egwene look like she does know more than I do, but she did it because she wanted to form a bond. She wanted to learn more about Egwene. I like this. This is so nice. And this is like a clever way to get what you want without threatening somebody or being rude to them in any way. She's actually playing the game really well. Like if Elaine is part of this The Great Game, which is a thing that I'll talk about more when we get to it in the show, she knows how to play it well. She is being a friend. She is letting herself look like I don't know as much as I know in order to gain more information. It's very clever, but it's also very kind. And when she is discovered, she's just like, well, yeah, I just really wanted to get to know you. And that's so endearing. It is so refreshing to have a nice character in this show. Loyal just wasn't enough at this point, so hopefully we're going to start balancing things out a little bit. But I didn't understand this next encounter, so the Mistress of Novices comes along and she's like, who the hell said it was okay for you to have maids and bringing in a bunch of crap into the tower or whatever? And she starts pressuring Elaine, like, who helped you to do this? Who gave you permission or said it was okay? Like there was some secret person. I got the impression that it wasn't Elaine who did it. And then Elaine goes, oh, it was just somebody doing a favor for my mother. But then why would Elaine want that done? I'm not 100% sure. Either way, it was just a little bit contrived, this bit of drama here, but it was a contrivance to make Elaine look even more awesome. Like she basically says, the Mistress of Novices is like, who helped you? You better tell me. And Elaine goes, well, if she's going to be punished for doing this, then I'll just take her punishment for her. And like, wow, she's protecting somebody who did a favor for her, that's really nice. Even though I don't believe for a second that it was a favor that Elaine asked her to do. She's protecting somebody who did something nice for her, or who she perceives to have done something nice for her. And the Mistress of Novices basically says, well, you're going to come up to my office every day for, how many times did she say? 3 months? Yeah, it's 3 months. And she says, you're going to come to my office every morning for the next 3 months, and I'm going to basically whip you across the shoulders or whatever. I guess it was inappropriate for her to say I was going to spank your ass, because that's kind of what they do in the books you would still get whipped, but it would be across your bottom. But you see Egwene kind of recognizing this loyalty and honor in Elaine. And yeah, Elaine's like, all right, I'll come before breakfast every morning. Like she's just ready to take it. And she's like adamant about doing this, and there's nothing the Mistress of Novices can do. And I like that Egwene recognizes this kind of loyalty, and she's not above being punished for somebody else, that she doesn't deserve this, but she's protecting that other person. So I like this. Then the Mistress of Novices asks Egwene where Nynaeve is, and Egwene's like, I don't know. And the Mistress of Novices just wants well, send her to my office straight away when you see her. Like, okay. And you can see like the disappointment, and it's not even disappointment, it's the jealousy. Elaine starts apologizing for, I wish you didn't have to see that. And this is where Egwene has her first very immature, well, at least they pay attention to you. The only reason anybody talks to me is because they want to know where my friend is.
All I hear all day long at school is how great Marcia is at this, or how wonderful Marcia did that. Marcia, Marcia, Marcia.
And this is very unlikable, but I will say that they do a good job of not having this go on too long. So well done there. You didn't have her do something unlikable for too long. They did carry it. This is the 3rd episode, I think, that we have seen that Nynaeve that Egwene is jealous of Nynaeve, because it was definitely in episode 1. And then in that episode, I think it was 6 or 7 in season 1, where she met Suan, I caught the expression on Egwene's face. So at least they informed the actress that that's the action that she has to have at that time. So, good job there, I guess, too. But I have been told that this doesn't happen in the books. So it's a bit contrived, but it is a good way to introduce a respect between Elaine and Egwene. So they get to Elaine's room, and it's been completely emptied. It is just as bare as Egwene's room was. And Egwene is like, well, you wanted them to clean out your room, and they both have a bit of a chuckle, which is nice. She's just laughing at her own predicament, well, I guess this is the way things are. It's just such a nice, likable character. I kind of want Elaine to be the MC of this show.
Sometimes we don't get what we want.
Then in the next scene, we have Elaine sharing a home brew with Egwene. I don't know if this is allowed or not, but So in the book, Elaine was into healing things. Like, she liked to heal animals and stuff that were hurt in the garden or whatever, which is why when Rand falls into the garden and he's hurt, she's like super excited to like, yay, a patient, a real life one. I kind of would have liked, because I have a feeling that her healing ability is important going forward, and we'll see in the show, yes it is, but I mean, I think it's more important even further down the line. Would have been nice if maybe she had a servant who hid a bird for her, or she hid a bird somewhere or something, an injured animal, and we see that among her things in the room, you know. But anyway, this is fine. She talks about how, you know, I figured out how to make a really strong home brew, and they're both drinking, and she goes, I tinker and stuff a lot on my own. She's like, when you're not allowed to go out or make friends or anything, you know, you can learn to do things to occupy yourself. I like this. This is like somebody who isn't sitting there going, I'm always so lonely, I never have anything to do. They showed that she figured out a practical way to occupy herself so that she wasn't lonely, or at least so that she isn't like, you know, just sinking under her own loneliness all the time. It's nice. She's a person who solves problems. And Elaine asks her about Nynaeve. Like, do you know Nynaeve? Like, I heard the Mistress of Novices asking you about that. And Egwene is like, yes, I'm assuming you know about her too. Yes, she's my best friend. And Elaine's like, oh, that's so cool, but also exhausting. I don't know. Like, she figures out that there's something going on here. And this is the point where Egwene and Nynaeve's storylines cross in this episode, and I really don't like it. I'm going to discuss it more in Nynaeve's story, so we'll just get to that. But she says that Nynaeve isn't doing anything. I work myself to the bone, study my ass off. She skips classes and doesn't even want to be here. And yet the harder I try, the further behind I fall. And the less she tries, the further ahead she just sails. And the hardest thing is that Nynaeve says that she came here to protect me, like she always has, whether I want her to or not. But where is she when I actually need her? You know, she's off fighting with warders or hanging out with Leandrin or whatever. And I love that Elaine calls her out on her shit, but she does it in such a kind and gentle way, which is very diplomatic and very wise. She basically says, look, I know that we just met, so please don't, get too offended by this, but I hope you don't mind that I'm just saying that jealousy doesn't look good on you. And Egwene tries to deny that she's jealous, and she's like, I am next in line to the most powerful kingdom in the world. I know what jealousy looks like. And I like that Egwene does kind of look down in shame there, like, she's right. She is so right. So as far as Egwene's story in this, I thought it was fine. I liked it a lot. I might have actually liked to have seen more of this in episode 1, but okay, this is where we are. I mean, it's hard to complain when I enjoyed this character so much. But I would actually be hoping to see this relationship more. So watching this the first time, I wanted to see Elaine and Egwene working on channeling together. Like, Elaine obviously is more advanced and Egwene has some blocks. Maybe it's Elaine who helps Egwene loosen up and kind of move on to the next step. Like, she's just enjoying her company so much, feels like she has a partner in all of this, that she's able to just sort of go with it and it works. I would like to see that, but we don't, and we'll get to that when we get to that. And now for the final arc that we're looking at, which is Nynaeve. And I like a lot what they did with Nynaeve, pairing her up with Leandrin. I was really hoping to see them doing more channeling type stuff together, more work in that area, but we didn't get that. So, okay, here's how it starts. Leandrin is giving Nynaeve kind of a tour of the different things that she might be doing as a accepted, because right now she's a novice, so she's, just doing work around the White Tower. But she says, as an accepted, you would basically be apprenticed to different Ajas. And this is a bit of an info dump, but it's not the worst thing in the world. So Leandrin explains what the gray Aja are. They're politicians. The brown Aja, they are the bookworms. And then the yellow Aja, they are they are healers. And she takes her to the hospital where she is she sees a girl who has breakbone, you know, just like how Egwene had breakbone fever, and the accepted girl in there heals her right away, just like healed. And you can see the spark of like amazement and inspiration, like,
I had no idea.
It finally dawns on Nynaeve that the one power can be a force for good that can do the things she wants to do, but even better. I mean, okay, I'm just going to try to ignore that Nynaeve had to be a complete idiot to have not realized this before, but okay, so she's inspired by this idea of I can actually heal somebody who has breakbone fever. And I like that Liandrin presents a very good reason for her to want to master her power and join the Red Aja instead. She says, I know what you saw in there, like that was amazing, like you get to heal people when they're sick. She's like, but they're treating the symptom. I can actually treat the cause so that nobody even gets sick in the first place. And Nynaeve is like, men who can channel are not a disease. And she's like, oh yeah, well, look, I make it so that no one will be hurt. Nobody's going to be need any protection. Like I can protect thousands of people. And she's like, and channeling makes us live much longer. And so I can actually have an effect on history. I can make this world a better place so that you don't get so many injured kids, you don't get so many sick kids. You get the idea.
You son of a bitch! I'm in!
This is a good, very tempting thing for Nynaeve to consider. Like, not only does she get the light bulb of, oh, I could use the one power to be a great healer, not just an average healer, but she's also tempted with the idea that I could help the world, which is where I was really hoping Liandrin would take this argument. And so she does. Then we have this isolated scene that I think was the scene that should have been cut. And actually, it makes me think that there was a scene in episode 1 should have been cut also. But it's Alanna and her 2 warders, and they're meeting with the Mistress of Novices, and they're essentially talking about how I think it's a mistake to let Liandrin work with Nynaeve. And she's also insinuating that Liandrin has proposed that Nynaeve should go through the arches, like she should go through that test that allows her to be brought into the accepted. And Alanna's talking about how, you know, we got to protect this girl because, I mean, haven't you noticed that we've got these really powerful Aes Sedai being born now, and they mentioned that there's Nynaeve and Egwene and Elaine, so they know that Elaine is also very powerful, not just your average Aes Sedai wannabe. And she tells the Mistress of Novices that the end of the world is coming, the apocalypse is upon us, basically, and the pattern is giving us tools, and we have to protect them, essentially. But the Mistress of Novices is like, look, I'm sorry, but Liandrin has already gotten everybody to call for a vote. And, you know, so you can vote also, you know, because they're going to vote whether or not Nynaeve should go through the arches. She's like, you can come in a vote, but unfortunately, I think you only stand as 1, not as 3. She's insinuating the other 2 warders being there. And she goes, if you're going to plan to be there for voting at all, because she notices that all the saddlebags and everything are packed up, like Alanna's about to leave. And we know where she's going. She's off to go be with Moiraine. And we know this even more because she has this conversation, Alanna, after the mistress has left. We've got Alanna and her 2 warders, and her 2 warders are like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay here? And Alanna's like, no, we need to go. You know, Moiraine needs us. And so it's left at that. Now, I don't like this, because if Alanna really does believe that Nynaeve is one of the tools that is going to help them save the world, she should be at the tower trying to save her. I mean, it was important enough to her that in episode 1, she was speaking out against Liandrin, talking to her there among all the other Aes Sedai. Like, we should see more of that. But she doesn't stay to fight for that. She goes off to help Moiraine. Now, what does Alanna know about Moraine's situation?
Nothing!
Watching the rest of the season, we know that she has no idea that Moiraine has found the dragon Reborn. She doesn't know. She doesn't know that Moiraine is doing something that is like saving the end of the world. She literally thinks that Moiraine is like, oh, she's having a really tough time, and she wants us to escort Lan back to the tower for some reason to prevent him from following her when she goes off to do something. Like, why would that be more important than saving Nynaeve when she recognizes the power in Nynaeve as being special? She has no idea what Moiraine is doing. So this doesn't make any sense. I would have cut this scene, and I would have cut her being interested in what's going on with Nynaeve and, speaking out against Liandrin. I think the only reason that they did that before was so that the audience would be like, wait, why doesn't she want Liandrin to work with Nynaeve? We didn't need that. We know why nobody would want Liandrin to work with Nynaeve. Because Liandrin is a bad guy. Now remember, earlier in season 1, Alanna actually spoke out in defense of Liandrin. So why would she suddenly turn against her here? I don't understand this. I don't get it.
It's what we do. We're like so random. Yeah, in Red Bank, where we're from, everyone's like, uh-oh, here comes trouble.
I really think that it was a waste. I don't think that Alanna should have been in the first episode, and I don't think that, maybe if she is there, it's not like a huge concern for her. She just tells the lady, like, I think this is a mistake, but okay. And then this scene in episode 2 should not have been there at all. It just shouldn't have. If you didn't need us to have like we're going to do the vote thing or whatever. If you did, have another meeting, kind of like we had in the garden in episode 1. Have the Mistress of Novices there talking with everybody and Liandrin going, she's ready to go through the arches. I think that we should do it. And these are all the people who think the same. And have Alanna like just shaking her head, maybe even exchange a look with the Mistress of Novices like, I don't think this is a good idea. And the Mistress of Novices maybe offhandedly saying to her, like, I'm sorry, but, the vote is the vote or something. I don't know. Moving on, gotta move on. Then we get a brief scene of Nynaeve showing up at Liandrin's door saying, hey, Liandrin said that I was allowed to come and see her. And the servant basically going, oh, you just missed her. She went down there. And so Nynaeve goes walking after Liandrin and doesn't catch up to her in time. And Liandrin has disappeared into a dead-end corridor. But Nynaeve finds a secret passage out of the White Tower, and she, can hear the sounds of the street above her, so she comes out of the secret passage, and she's like on the marketplace streets. So she knows that Liandrin is up to something because she has snuck out of the tower. She didn't want to be noticed leaving the tower. So this was actually a stalking scene that I approved of and I thought was well done. Nynaeve, you're not being a creep in this scene. You're just using your creepy power for good. She follows Liandrin through the night to the North Harbor, I'm assuming, into a house where apparently nobody has to open or close doors. The doors are just all open. Liandrin goes in. She's at the bedside of an old man, and she has stolen the Crimson Thorn powder from the hospital, which when we were in the hospital scene, there was a moment where Nynaeve was like, you're not gonna, poison the girl, right? And like kill her. And they're like, oh no, like, this is just used to take the edge off the pain. But she took this Crimson Thorn powder with her, and she's giving it to this old man, and she's calling the old man like my love, my boy, or whatever. So we know this is her son. And Nynaeve reveals herself to Liandrin, and Liandrin is very upset. And Nynaeve is like, I'm sorry, I thought you were poisoning him. I thought that he was a man who could channel. I didn't realize what was going on here. And Liandrin is furious at her, like, get out, get out. But Nynaeve is like, you're giving him Crimson Thorn tea, but it's taking the edge off the pain. But look at his hand, it's spasming. So he's still got pain in his heart. So even if you walked away, he would still be in pain. And that's when Liandrin sends her out.
Yeah! All right!
And what I don't like about this is I think it's going to be obvious to anyone who sees this, but why the hell didn't Liandrin send her son to the Yellow Aja? I mean, okay, I don't care if they're like, well, nobody can know that this is her son, like he's in danger. I'm not sure why he would be in danger if people knew she had a son, unless that's like a rule. Like, you cannot have a child if you are an Aes Sedai, or we will kill your son.
They don't allow kids. They are persona non grata there.
Is that what's going on? Like, I don't know. I haven't read about anything like that, so I guess that would be the only acceptable reason. Like, they will kill him, or they will still me or something. I don't know if they find out he's my son, whatever. But why didn't she send him to the Yellow Aja? If she can't take him herself, why didn't she have one of her little spies or somebody she's threatened take him to the Yellow Aja, say that he is your uncle or whatever, and do that? And then he would get actual help. He would be cured of whatever it is that's causing him pain. That's just stupid. So they've made Liandrin stupid again. So my respect for her has just gone down a lot. But Nynaeve runs off and Liandrin is like, I'm so sorry, my poor boy. So hopefully she's going to take him to the Yellow Aja right away. She's not. At this point, they're clearly trying to show a reason for us to feel sorry for Liandrin. Like we should feel sympathetic towards her. I don't think this happens in the book, and it doesn't happen. I know, having read all of The Great Hunt and started this one, I know that this hasn't happened up until the point that I'm at. But I don't think this happens at all ever in the entire story. So I'm not 100% sure why they've done it, other than to make it harder for us to dislike Liandrin when it is revealed that, yeah, she's just as evil as we thought she was at the beginning of this whole show. You know, in season 1, she was obviously evil. Now we're seeing a side of her that might be good, but no, she's actually evil. If they did it to just be an extra reason to convince us that she's maybe not evil and we're just perceiving her wrong, then I think it was successful. I think that they did a good job with this. Except that it is a legitimate reason to think that she's not actually evil, or that, you know, she is a character who loves and cares and has the capacity for empathy like this in a good way. Then we have yet another very juvenile scene, the whole like, oh, I'm gonna go over and try to talk to you, but I only get a sliver of your conversation with somebody else, and it's the part that would offend me the most, so then I walk off all angry. That's what happens. She goes over to Egwene's door when Egwene and Elaine are talking about, you know, how Egwene's like, oh, like she's always there, like, you know, never trying hard, and I'm trying my ass off, and she just keeps getting ahead, and she says she's here to protect me, even though I don't want her to be here protecting me, and she's never here when I actually need her. She's off doing, you know, sparring with warders and doing whatever with Liandrin. That's all she hears, and then she walks away. She doesn't hear the part about the, oh, it's because I'm jealous of her, and that's awfully stupid and petty of me. So I don't like this at all. I don't like this at all. It's so contrived. Okay, but this is what we're doing. Nynaeve goes off to her room to sulk, and then Liandrin knocks on the door, and I'm glad that the first thing is that it seems Nynaeve was going to apologize to Liandrin, but Liandrin is like, just shut up. It's too late for me to take back what I have already done, but I've already done it, so we're just going to move forward. So basically she's saying that I would not have recommended you to go through the arches after this, after the whole coming in and finding, you know, stalking me and finding me with my son, but it's too late now, so you're coming with me. So I don't know. Maybe it would have been nice. Would have been, I don't know why they had to have that happen. Perhaps I would have liked if Nynaeve or Liandrin came in here and was like, look, we're not talking about that ever again. And if I ever find out that you tell anybody about that, I will kill you. I would kind of like that. But then I would like Liandrin to recognize that Nynaeve is about to go through something very dangerous, and she does think that Nynaeve is this powerful weapon who should live. Like, I'd like to see that sincerity on her part. Whether that's in her character in the books or not, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just for the show. Let's have Liandrin do something that's good, and that is say, you know, maybe even a thank you for I'm going to do what I need to for him, but if you tell anyone about him, I'll kill you. Something like that. And then be like, come with me. Nynaeve is like, where the hell are we going? They go down a dark passageway, and the Mistress of Novices and that really tall lady who is always with Suwan, the one who was her herald before, I don't know who she is, are there. And they have this sort of ritualistic exchange of dialogue where, who have you brought? I've brought Nynaeve, is she ready? Like she's ready to face her fears and whatever, this kind of thing. Like, that this is something that's rehearsed, that they do this as a ritual, and then they lead her into the arches, and we get a glimpse of what the arches are. They're just a room with literal arches, and they're behind like a safe door, like, one of those doors with a wheel that you have to turn to get into it. A locked room. And that's a good cliffhanger, because it has been explained to us that women die going through the arches. And I think that was explained by Alana and the warders. Actually, I think it was one of the warders who said it. Why would he have to explain that is something that happens, that women die when they go through the arches. I mean, that could have happened during the meeting, what I proposed, the meeting of all the Aes Sedai, like doing the vote where Alana is kind of sitting in the corner. Like, she could say, women die going through the arches, and we can't afford to lose her. But at the same time, I'm also wondering, does somebody's ability to channel have anything to do with their readiness for going through the arches? Because my impression in the books is no, it doesn't. They just bring them through the arches when they're sure that they've gone through this phase of, like, you know, they really want to be an Aes Sedai. And they're like, okay, we're pretty sure that you could go through the arches, face your fears, overcome them, and sacrifice things that are important to you in order to learn how to be an Aes Sedai. Like, that's the test. And that really has nothing to do with your ability to channel. As a matter of fact, it is stated again and again in the books that you cannot channel in there. But so I'm not sure why it's supposed to be, you know, like, oh no, she's not ready to go through, but whatever. Anyway, they've decided to do this now. Would I have done it like this? I mean, if I was doing what I consider to be a good adaptation, I wouldn't have had all these changes, all these differences. But okay, so they've decided to do this in the show. Was this done well? I think it was fine. I think that, you know, okay, ending on this cliffhanger of there are the arches. We know that they're dangerous. We know she's about to go through this big thing. I don't think it was necessary to have that conflict between her and Leandrin going into this situation. I'm not sure why they felt it necessary to bring it to that point, but they did. They decided to do that. But that's it. That's all I've got for episode 2, and it was really freaking long, even though I tried to make it shorter, but there it is. So I'm not going to say any more. I'm just going to end it.
End of story. Goodbye, the end. Any questions?
Please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you're feeling really generous, please check out my Patreon or Ko-fi. I've got links in the description, or you can hit the Money Heart Thanks button down below. And be good to yourself.